Alright, so today we're going to be talking about potential problems and some concerns when it comes to Ghost Recon Breakpoint. We're going to talk about always online, AI teammates, tiered weapon loot, and all of those things that some people have some concerns about. So that first one, that's kind of a dirty one. Always online is not something most people want to hear. It doesn't ever really deter me from buying a game, but for some people with unreliable internet connections, I understand the problem. And just in general, people's situations are different, and some people just don't have access to internet all the time. And it is kinda weird. This game does have a story and an open world that just can't be accessed without internet, which is frustrating, but there are some benefits to it. In fact, I believe the reason, you can correct me, I believe the reason Division did this was because it solved some potential desync problems that can happen when you're loaded into a game that's, loaded on your local machine, and then somebody joins in, and I believe the game has to reiterate your local game state to whoever is in your match. So you just having to join a server to play in general would make a potentially smoother experience for when your friends join. There shouldn't be random enemies spawning and despawning, player positions should never desync from each other, because you guys are both on the same server. Unless it's still doing the same thing where I load up a locally hosted world that a friend then joins and the game reiterates my local game state to them, we just have to be always online so Ubisoft can track what we're doing and keep track of their player base and what loot they're getting and if they're exploiting anything and what guns are overpowered or whatever. That's not that cool to me. I don't think that's super necessary. But if it was just to make it so that, everything's going to be more consistent and seamless when it comes to online co-op, then I guess that's okay, but still, giving people an open world story that they can't experience without Wi-Fi or Ethernet is rough. Hopefully they reconsider that decision, and next up, in terms of single player, you do not have AI teammates in this game, you have drones that you can control, which when playing solo takes away the experience for a lot of people. Ghost Recon has always had you working with a squad of AI buddies. This is another thing that I don't really care about because I play with the AI off in Wildlands, just in general. I don't like them. I don't like micromanaging them. I feel more badass and more free when I play by myself, so that's what I do anyway. It's not a big deal to me, but it's an online-only game where if you do play it by yourself online, you don't really feel like you're getting the full experience. You feel like you're kind of playing alone in a co-op game, and that kind of sucks. I know some people that play Division by themselves, and they kind of describe the same thing, where it's very lonely. I don't mind and I won't mind, but it still is a hindrance for some people, and again, I hope they reconsider that and the online-only aspect. Now, the next thing is that people are saying this game is just trying to be Division. I've seen multiple YouTubers say this, I've seen people on Twitter say this, I've seen people replying to Ubisoft's official announcement by saying, hey, wow, you just made a worse Division. And, well, no. Granted, I do think of Division when I think of tiered loot, always on, no AI teammates, but I don't think the game becomes Division. Division isn't just defined by those three attributes. In fact, I don't think any game is defined by those first two, always online and no AI teammates describes a lot of games. But the tiered loot system, if handled poorly, can negatively impact the game. And I don't see people talking about this, maybe they have, but the tiered loot system could potentially become monetized to death. Now, Ubisoft's microtransaction and DLC history is not clean and wonderful, and I would be worried about these tiered loot drops being monetized to all hell. Ubisoft loves to nickel and dime people. A couple dollars here, a couple dollars here, $20 here, a pack here, a year 3 pass, a year 4 pass. They love to do that. And I think if these tiered loot drops are monetized to hell, I believe that will definitely hamper the experience and make the game a little bit shittier overall. Because spending a lot of time looking for specific loot drops that I could just as well spend $10 on will feel like a waste of my time or a waste of my money, and that's a bad paradox to be in. Also, hopefully the tier system isn't like, okay, well, the lowest tier is garbage, don't use it after you get a better one, and better ones are downright overpowered, replacing anything else other than it. Now, I believe they're going to be doing about 5 tiers per weapon, or so you have the basic one and then 4 variants of it with increasing rarity, and hopefully they do it the way Call of Duty Infinite Warfare did it, where The most common ones still have practical advantages like lower recoil, more ammunition, and then as it gets higher in the rarity, it just starts to do more interesting things, not just blatantly overpowered ones. Like maybe there's a sniper rifle that spots people a lot faster or doesn't need a direct line of sight on somebody to spot them. You can kind of aim next to them and it'll detect them. Maybe something like that. An interesting gimmick or feature. Maybe an assault rifle with a grenade launcher that instead of like going forward and then arcing, goes completely straight and blows up on contact. I'm definitely spitballing. Both of those things sound a little bit powerful or unnecessary, but hopefully it's like that, where it's like, it's practical, a little bit better and practical, and then a little bit weird, and then kind of very weird, very gimmicky. And those gimmicky weapons, those gimmicky like epic variants of the M4, just have attachments and cosmetics that makes it interesting and not blatantly overpowered, and again, hopefully they're not purchasable. I can see them being monetized to death, and also hopefully they don't oversaturate the loot pool with tons of stupid guns that aren't necessary in the game. But overall, I do like the idea that they might add in an FAL, like later in the game, and then like, okay, well, you can get this FAL, and then there's also 4 variants of the FAL that drop from mini bosses and stuff. I'm okay with that, but hopefully they don't oversaturate it, over-monetize it, or just make it so that, oh, the common ones have bad damage and bad range and terrible bullet drop, and you're definitely going to want to grind until you get the better version. Like, I don't know, there's some weight to that, but it's still like, I don't know. I hope they do it well. I hope they balance out what they're going for there, and they don't just shoehorn in a shitty system that they can then monetize and oversaturate later down the line. Having 15 variants of an M9 is not extra content, Ubisoft. This is not a looter shooter. You're just adding a looter shooter element, right? Wink wink, nudge nudge. Moving on. The next problem that people have is that the world is fictional. I've heard this one a lot, actually. Is that like, oh, you're not doing realistic places anymore. You know, we went from Bolivia to this new fictional place called Aurora, and I'm actually totally okay with this, and I don't get this complaint at all. Wildlands is a fun game, but its open world was repetitive and empty and just plain old lifeless. Between the lifeless, brain-dead NPCs and terrible drivers, to long stretches of land that your character really can't utilize other than to just traverse across them for no reason when you might as well just be taking a helicopter. I mean, certain games can get away with that kind of open world if they have, like, these dynamic events that happen and interesting encounters like in Red Dead Redemption, or a large set of gadgets like in the Just Cause games. You know, a big empty space in Just Cause is a playground with your wingsuit and your grappling hook and all of your interesting toys and physics-based, you know, playthings. That's its own thing. Whereas in Wildlands, you'll find yourself mostly just, you know, wandering around or just going from base to base, mission to mission. The different biomes would have been more interesting if they actually would have affected your player, but it looks like we actually have to fear our environment a little bit in Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Traversing up and down hills is kind of a scary situation if you run out of stamina or if you're injured. Food and water is important, and you can use the environment like mud or snow to camouflage yourself. It goes from snowy mountains to volcanoes to islands and jungles, and it just looks really freaking cool. On top of that, they said they've greatly improved the vehicle mechanics. They apparently made that very clear in their conference. This is from Operator Drewski's video. Apparently the driving mechanics are greatly improved. And also people are just mad that the game is too fictional overall, saying that it's too sci-fi, and I don't get this one either because it's not really that sci-fi. There's drones and people with goofy cloaks and Destiny Hunter masks. Big deal. I prefer more practicality in games like this, and that's one of the reasons I liked Wildlands, but you have to admit, Wildlands' world was pretty bland, and most of your gadgets just, you know, were various types of grenades and mines. It wasn't really that interesting. I'm not saying it wasn't fun and that I don't enjoy it still, but it's not something that I'm gonna look back on and go, why didn't they pursue this instead? I don't know. We've seen some great gadgets like the fence cutter and the smoke pellet. If you guys haven't watched their gameplay reveal, I recommend going to Ubisoft's channel and watching the gameplay reveal. It's about 13 minutes long. I highly recommend it because the game looks pretty damn practical. Even in the trailer, the main like spooky looking bad guys are using TAR-21s and ARs, and like the drones just have like assault rifles attached to the bottom of them and that cool little trigger slot. Like, that's all it is. You're not gonna get chased by lasers, you're not playing Generation Zero. It's supposed to be kind of near future, there's a little bit more emphasis on drone technology, but everything else looks incredibly practical and gritty, and I love that. But I do hope we get things like wingsuits. I hope we get things like zip lines and grappling hooks to scale buildings and go from one elevation to the next, and also to, you know, have an alternative to the parachute. But yeah, some of the complaints I don't quite get because, yeah, it would have been cool to see like another practical thing. Like maybe if it took place in North Korea or something like that, that could have been cool. It could have been like a mercenaries game in that sense. But I don't know. I don't need that. I want the game to be fun. I don't really care if it crosses off every specific little box. Like it has to take place in a realistic area and have AI teammates. Otherwise, it's not a Ghost Recon game. Like, I don't know. Managing my character's hunger and thirst and stamina while I go through a harsh environment where every bullet could mean I'm limping for the rest of the day. I don't know, that invigorates me if they do it right, and I can't get mad about anything until I play the game. Some people are already disappointed by some things, and that's understandable, and I totally respect that. But in my opinion, and I hold this actually in a pretty high regard, this particular opinion, this game will come down to its mechanics. Is it fun to take down a base of enemies? Is it fun to replay missions? Is the loot actually fun to obtain, but not necessary to obtain? I kind of like that it's a pseudo looter shooter and it's like a survival light game. I like that because that adds a bit more depth and replayability, and everything else, the always online, the AI teammates, doesn't bother me, but I do hope they reconsider those things before October 4th. So I am with you guys on that if that's a problem for you. Because some of you guys are like, my internet cuts out, and I don't want the game to just go, oh, you don't get to play until that comes back. Like, that's not worth your $60 if that's the case. It's not worth $20. It's not worth $5 if you don't think you can consistently play it. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. This is an open discussion because it's an open discussion. The game isn't out yet. I don't know anything about it. I can hope for whatever I want. I don't really have any blind enthusiasm. I'm just kind of cautiously optimistic. We don't know enough yet to get mad, in my opinion. I think the worst thing we've heard about this game so far is Nomad's new voice actor and the fact that it's online only. That's all I'm saying. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you when I see you guys. Good. Oh, my chair. I need a goddamn new chair. Okay, I'll see you soon.